Hi, I'm Angela Nicholson, and in this video tutorial I'm going to show you how to convert a colour shot like this one into a black and white image like this using a black and white adjustment layer. So let's look at the colour image. The first step is to create an adjustment layer. To do that we go to Layer, down to New Adjustment Layer, and then we need to select black and white. And we just click OK. I'm just going to move the palette over to one side so we can see a bit more of the image. You'll notice that the default image is quite flat looking. There's lots of grey and not much black or white. And there's a couple of ways that we can adjust this. These sliding controls in the panel here govern the brightness of the colours that make up the original image. So if I take the blue slider and move it to the left, you'll see the blue of the sky is getting much darker. If I slide it to the right, it's becoming brighter and it's merging into those white clouds. So I'm going to take it back down and make it quite dark. Now you may remember that this field was full of yellow flowers, so I can adjust the brightness of those using the yellow slider. Again, going to the left is making it dark, whereas pushing it over to the right is really brightening them up. And then you can play around with the other sliders to see how they affect the colours. Now if I use the cyans, you can see it's darkening the brighter areas of the blue sky, or the cyan parts of the blue sky. If you're not sure how to start off adjusting your image, you can always use some of these preset settings. So if you start with a blue filter, you see that that's darkened the yellow and brightened the blue because it's working like a photographic coloured filter that you might use over a lens. To see the impact of the other filters, just click on them in turn to see what happens. Go down to the high contrast blue, you see that's really darkening those yellows while lightening the blues. Alternatively, there's high contrast red, which boosts the contrast because it's darkening the blues and the greens and brightens the opposite colours. I quite like that effect. There's other options like infrared. There's another red filter. I quite like the high contrast red filter. So you can use that if you want as a starting point, and then you can always tweak these sliders to vary the result. So you might choose to darken the blue a bit more even, or perhaps the cyans. It depends how dramatic a look you're going for. See, interesting, the green slider there isn't having a great deal of effect because there's not that much green in that image. The majority of the foreground is yellow. I think it looks better, a bit brighter. Now using the filters and the sliders is all well and good, but you need to remember a little bit about the original image, and sometimes that can be a bit tricky. So if you click on this option here, and then you see how the cursor has changed now to an ink dropper, and then click on the image, you'll see that the cursor has changed to resemble the icon in the panel. And I can click on there and selecting that colour and then sliding to the left to darken and to the right to brighten. And you see it's only affecting that area. It's selected the blue channel and is adjusting the brightness of the blue in the image. Similarly, if I click down here, you see how the yellow has selected in the panel, and I can adjust that and brighten and darken. It's a nice intuitive way of working. It just allows you to adjust the bits of the image that you want without having to remember what colour they are. It's really quite effective. Now, if we want to at this stage, we can tone the image or apply a tint just by ticking in that box. And then if we check in here, we can select the colour that we want to use. So I can make it more subtle if I want, or stronger. And also you can change the hue that you're using just by clicking in this rainbow. I think the sepia's worked better. Let's make it a bit warmer just by going further towards the red. Okay. But I think I'm going to stick with the black and white image and just untick the box. So there we have it. That was quite a quick way of making a black and white conversion. The beauty of applying this conversion by using an adjustment layer is that we can go back and make changes in the future. So if I just say create a new adjustment layer, I'm going to adjust the levels. Pull that down to make sure we've actually got some white in the image. If I reveal the layer palette, I may decide that I want to go back and change the black and white conversion. So I just click in there to bring up the settings. And of course I can actually get rid of the black and white conversion and the levels adjustment at any point. So we just need to save that as a TIFF file or a PSD to preserve those layers. Now we're going to take a look at how you can adjust the contrast of a black and white image using a curves adjustment layer. So again, just go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and Curves. Click OK. And now you see we've got a straight line going from the darkest point to the brightest point. If I click on the line near the top and drag it up, I'm making the brightest areas, well in fact the whole of the image, brighter, but I'm particularly working on the brighter parts. Now if I click further down and drag that down, I'm darkening the really darkest points. And you see how I've created a really shallow sort of S shape. That is boosting the contrast of this image. Now because this is an adjustment layer, I can go back at any time and readjust the contrast of the image just by clicking on the adjustment points and moving them again. So I might decide I actually only want to adjust the really dark areas. Just push that up a little bit so they're a bit brighter. Similarly, I might decide I can put an anchor point in there, pull that down, and then brighten this area. You've got to be careful that you don't over adjust the image because you can end up with some very strange effects. And if you put a point in that you don't want anymore, just click on it and drag it off to the side. So that's boosting the contrast. Alternatively, if I want to lower the contrast, I just create a curve in the opposite direction. So I'm darkening the highlights now. Just drag that point off. And I'm brightening the shadows. And you can see how it's produced a much flatter image, but we've got more detail visible in the shadows. So this is a really useful technique, not only for bringing out detail, but also for adjusting the contrast, the global contrast of the image. I actually prefer a slightly higher contrast result with this. So I'm going to put just a very shallow S-curve in. And there we go, that's it finished. Now if we compare the final image with the original one, you'll see that that very subtle S shape to the curve has had quite a dramatic impact. So you don't need to manipulate the curve very much at all on many occasions. Sometimes just very subtle movements will get the result that you're looking for. So that's adjusting the contrast of a black and white image using a curves adjustment layer in a nutshell.